Welcome to the Peak Season Podcast, the show where we dive deep into all things short-term rentals, hospitality, and how to run your property like a pro.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tyler, and I started hosting in Northern Michigan in 2022, and I've owned and managed 2 properties there, earning Airbnb Superhost along the way. My newest listing, White Birch Cabin, has consistently been recognized among the top 1% of Airbnb homes in Northern Michigan.
And I'm Luke. I've owned and managed homes in multiple markets, hosted thousands of guests, and received over 400 5-star reviews. Today I want to talk about 5-star reviews and how consistent 5-star reviews aren't luck, they are cultivated. So today we're going to break down exactly how we prep guests, surprise them, educate them, and follow up to earn those consistent 5-star stays.
Yeah, Luke, let's start with why 5 stars even matter, right? So 5-star reviews equals trust, visibility, and more bookings. And the Airbnb algorithm rewards properties with consistent high ratings, and they show up higher in the search results, and obviously they convert to better rates. But it's not just about the algorithm, it's about perception, right? And guests decide whether they have a 5-star stay before they even walk through the door. So I know when I first started out, I used to think they were just a result of cleanliness, right? And my decor. But I learned quickly that the entire guest journey from the moment they book, you're shaping those expectations.
Couldn't agree more. And I think the 5-star experiences, they're built more on systems than luck. You know, occasionally we get a guest that is an outlier, but for the most part, it's the systems from start to finish through the entire stay that are going to build that 5-star review.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So prepping a guest for a 5-star review starts before they even arrive with our communication. So before they even check in, we're setting the stage for that 5-star review by preloading them with all the information they're going to need prior to their stay and how that leads into their arrival and just sort of meeting that expectation before they even get to the property.
Be warm and proactive, not robotic, right? And I think, I think through things like my pre-arrival message, it ends like something like, can't wait for you to experience a 5-star stay at White Birch Cabin, right? It's simple, but it kind of sets the tone early on. You're planning that seed for the 5-star experience, not hoping for one, but it's an expected one.
Absolutely. So Tyler, do you send out a message the morning that they're traveling to the cabin, or is it right around check-in time?
So it just depends season to season for me.
Okay.
But during my highest peak season, I actually send out a obviously once they book, I have an automated message, and I do even say, this is an automated message confirming your booking. Why do I do that? Because I want them to know that I'm not physically sitting by my computer each and every second, right? And I think it's important to be transparent. And then I send one 7 days prior to their check-in. Here on Lake Michigan and in our location, we don't have just all sand, right? It's kind of rocky. So it's things like just reminding them, like bringing some shoes, water shoes. That way they're not like showing up bare feet, hurting their feet, right? Again, you're being proactive, you're being transparent, you're helping them understand kind of the ins and outs of your property from the get-go. And then 2 days prior to the start, prior to their stay, I send out, another message with just some more details, the location of the property, information about parking, their door code, things of that nature. So kind of starting a few messages even before they even arrive and step foot into the property.
Yeah, I do pretty much the same thing, 7 days out and then a couple days out. And I always tell them when they're going to hear from me next usually as well. So they're not 7 days out. They don't message me right afterwards asking for the door code or the check-in instructions or things like that.
Yep.
And then the first morning or the morning of their check-in, I usually hit them with another message around the time they're going to be on their way, around 10, 11 a.m., and let them know where the best places to stop on the way in are and things like that. And that kind of leads us into another topic. Why don't you take that one, Tyler?
Yeah. So kind of the third one is what I like to call surprise and delight. These are maybe touches the guests didn't expect, but things that they always typically remember. So it could be, a handwritten note. It could be a small s'mores kit for the families for the campfire. It could be locally roasted coffee bean. The goal is to create an emotional memory that guests remember, and guests always remember how they feel.
Absolutely. One of the things that I like to do is I let them know in that message when they're on the way that we have firewood waiting for them at the cabin. And I think that takes a lot of the stress off. I know when I used to drive up to Northern Michigan for vacation, we'd always try and figure out where we're going to get our firewood on the way in, and to not have to worry about that and just say, hey, we've got a stack. It's been delivered here for you. Help yourself to as much as you need. It takes that completely, out of the equation for them, and then they can just focus on getting those last minute groceries or things like that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Luke. And even I don't know if it's really a surprise, but one other thing I do is you know, and again, it's kind of a message beforehand, but I let them know about a partnership I have with a local grocery delivery company, and I would say about 90% of my guests utilize that, and they can go in, they can shop for their groceries online. It gets delivered to the cabin before they even arrive, and they're now in my cabin, not having to worry about going to get groceries, things like that. It's not a surprise once they get to the property, but it's a surprise and an offering of a service that is a nice to have, right? So I'm not worrying about going a day or two before I'm packing for my trip and getting ready to travel.
That is really cool. I didn't know that you did that. So 90% of your guests use it?
Yeah, it's a very
Wow.
high utilization. So much the owner
Wow.
asked me to have to do some free golfing with him. So
Oh, wow.
I need to
I might
take
have
him
to
up
get
on
their
that.
info from you. That's really cool. So they actually unpack all the groceries and put them away, and
Yeah.
it's in the
Yeah, so
fridge
they
and all
come
that?
and I have a separate door code access for them. They put on booties so they're not, dirty upon arrival, and they put everything that needs to be refrigerated in the fridge, everything that's not, they sit nicely on the kitchen island. It's a wonderful service. So,
That's very cool. And it's just a link that you give in the one of the 7-day out message?
yep, that's correct.
Wow.
That's correct.
Cool.
Another thing when we think about surprise and delight, it's some things that just like it's maybe something that's always an unforgotten item, right? When you travel, I know when I travel, and matter of fact, I did this last year when I was traveling with some guys to an Airbnb in Indiana, and I forgot my toothbrush and toothpaste, right? And that's one of those things that I just keep those little disposable toothbrush and toothpaste, feminine products, things that maybe people tend to forget or at least get some by until they can run up to the local market or the grocery store to grab.
Absolutely. So you keep all that in the bathroom, or do you have it in just one of the closets, or?
Yeah, we keep it in the bathrooms. And
Okay.
upstairs it's in a drawer, and then in the master bathroom it's kind of we have a nice, arch little decorative storage area, if you will.
Okay.
And that's where we keep those along with extra towels and things of that nature.
Very cool. I know one of the things that I've been wanting to do and I haven't been able to do it yet is a just in case basket where it has all that stuff plus some more, maybe an umbrella or snacks, protein bars, things like that. Just in case, pull the pin, and
Mhm.
and here's some stuff that can help you out on your trip if needed. And I think we'd probably find out that guests ended up leaving extra things in there for the future guests as well, which might be kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It's something that something we should both implement, right? Didn't even think about that, but like even like you said, like an umbrella or something of that nature, right? It can get rainy and it can just happen at the whim. So having things like that maybe people didn't pack. I know I don't have an umbrella regularly in my vehicle. I probably should, but I don't, right? So
Right.
that's a great idea. Maybe it's not something physical for them, but something that again sets the tone. I have a welcome mat that I put out on the front doormat, the front doorway, entryway this season. And it said, you've booked, you've traveled, you're here, enjoy your stay. Right. Again, it's just setting that tone, setting that excitement, getting them, ready for their vacation to relax.
Yeah, that's very cool. All right, so the guests have checked in now. They're in our property, and they're having that amazing stay that we know they're going to have. So, what are some things that we can do to set up the 5-star review during the meat of the stay?
I think it's also, educating their guests, educating your guests, on reviews and throughout the stay. Again, it can be these subtle things, but I think one of the things you and I both do, Luke, is we have the fridge magnet right inside the home, and it shows the different ratings, and it says, Airbnb ratings are different than a hotel rating, right? And it kind of gives them examples of what a 5-star means compared to, what a 4, 3, 2, 1 star is as it relates to Airbnb's, method of evaluating ratings.
Absolutely. And I think if a guest leaves you a 4-star review and they think that's a good review, then that is a reflection on the host and not the guest.
Yeah,
Where if a guest thinks that they're giving you a good review and they had a great time and it's 4 stars because your place isn't the Ritz-Carlton, then it was our
right.
fault because we didn't educate them properly. or
Yeah.
communicate that well enough. So we need to find a way to do that and make sure that that message is getting through. And I do find
Yeah.
that refrigerator magnet, there's a direct correlation between having that and not.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it still continues on through your messaging through the stay, right? So, the morning of their first night, the first night of their stay, I check in, see how everything's going, and I say, I hope you're experiencing a 5-star stay at White Birch Cabin. Right. Again, still setting that expectation and that tone, I think is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. That first morning, I say, 5 stars are our goal. And if anything is less than that, please give us a chance to fix it.
Yeah.
So, there's no reason at that point why, if something isn't meeting the guest expectation, that we haven't had a chance to fix it. And so that way, when it comes time to review, at least the ball was in their court. If there was something that wasn't great for them, if we didn't get a chance to fix it, then, there's not much we can do.
Right. And then Luke, let's talk about, okay, so now we have, the pre-messages, we have, that the next morning, that first morning of their stay, obviously there's conversations that can be had during in between there. But let's kind of talk about another moment, another critical moment, which is kind of, guests are getting ready to check out, right? So talk to me a little bit about how you set that tone and expectation maybe during your checkout messages as well.
Yeah, I mean, first I try not to bombard them with a lot of instructions during checkout because it's already vacations is coming to an end, and we don't want them to be stressed about this laundry list of things. It's for me, it's basically take out the trash and don't leave the door open,
Yeah.
and other than that, I'm good. So we don't want to overwhelm them, but we do want to keep that tone and just keep the expectation that we hope everything was 5-star worthy, and let them know how important the 5-star stay is to us. And there's still time for us to fix something. At this point, we probably couldn't fix an actual issue at the property, but maybe we could buy them dinner on the last night or something like that if something wasn't great. So there's been times when the guests are coming, it's almost time to check out, and they have brought something to my attention that I didn't know about. And I bought them a bottle of wine or a pizza or something, and it's kind of helped smooth it over.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Luke. I think talking about that, being honest and asking ahead of time, builds trust and gives you a chance to save that rating before it's posted. Right. And a great point too, regarding cleaning, right? Of course, we would all love it if guests started laundry and started dishwasher and did all of these things. But, I think when guests are being charged a certain rate, not everybody's cleaning rates may be higher or lower than others, but I don't think that a guest feels it's necessary to have a laundry list of things to do, and I think that would have somewhat of a negative impact if you have a really lengthy list of things that they need to do before checking out.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have them start any laundry. I do ask them to start the dishwasher, but no
Yeah,
laundry. I don't have to
same
do
here.
anything with the towels or the sheets or anything like that.
Right.
But yeah, and I guess it's one thing I do appreciate that Airbnb doesn't put the cleaning fee out there anymore. They just kind of bake it into the rate. At first, I wasn't a huge fan of that, but now it's kind of it. I do think it removes that point of friction because we do have a fairly high cleaning fee. We pay our cleaners well. Our business relies on them. We don't want to shortchange them, but not having it front and center for them saying, "Oh, geez, I paid this much for cleaning," and they're asking me to start the dishwasher.
Right.
I think it's actually a good thing. It's at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think another thing to kind of piggyback on that, Luke, is it's all about to that transparency and being proactive, right? I know you
Yep.
have a digital guidebook. I think you use Canva. I use Touch Stay, right, as a digital guidebook. But they have all of this information even prior to their stay, so they can review things. Obviously, if there's questions, that gives them time to ask, right? So again, it's really about this proactive communication and information that you're giving the guest. Really helps set the tone for a positive stay.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the post follow up, Luke. The guests, they've checked out, they've left. Now what?
I have a auto message that goes out about 2.5, 3 hours after they check out. So hopefully they're still in the car on the way home, and my cleaners have had a chance to come in, and they would have told me if anything was out of place, or if there was a reason for me to not leave them a 5-star review. So I have a message that goes out and says, "Hey, I just left you a 5-star review. I'd appreciate it if you could do the same." Guest reviews are the lifeblood of our small business. Actually, I say our family's small business because that's what it is. And
Right.
then and we just humbly ask for the 5-star review. And I think invoking a little bit of reciprocity, once they know that we left them a 5-star review, it kind of helps push them over the finish line. A lot of times we get our 5-star review right then, probably before they've even made it back to their house.
Yeah, exactly. A 5-star stay doesn't end at checkout. It's how you close the loop. One thing that I also do is I do something very similar to you. Not only am I telling them that I'm leaving them a 5-star review and reminding them that I'd be grateful, to our small business, for them to leave me, a positive 5-star review. But I also say, hey, if there's any feedback that you have, positive or negative, we really do value your input. And there's a private feedback section within the review platform itself, and we would appreciate if they left it there. And again, I can't tell you how many times that I get private feedback, both positive and not necessarily negative, but like, hey, we wish, or have you considered putting, for example, a faucet on the side of the deck to wash our feet off after getting off the beach, things of that nature, right? But it's always left in that private feedback section, and I really appreciate that. And then I respond to those, right? Because again, I want to be grateful and thankful for their thoughts and taking the time to give me that feedback. The least I can do is acknowledge that feedback.
And I do think, having been a co-host on your Airbnb account for a little while now, I have noticed that you get a ton of private feedback, and it's because you're asking for it. And
Yeah.
I don't ever ask for it, but I get some, but I haven't ever asked for it in the past. And I think that might be something I start doing, because you get a ton of that private feedback.
Yeah.
And, usually it is constructive, or a constructive criticism,
Sure.
or something that they just, they wish your property had 3 floors or something like that. So,
Right.
just
Less gnats.
sometimes it's not even something that's possible, right? But giving them that channel to do that, I think, does help the actual public review stay more positive. So yeah, kudos to you for doing that, and even more kudos for responding to each one.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Yeah, I'm curious, I know we both use Hospitable. Does Hospitable have an AI response for the private feedback, or do you always type out?
It does not have a private response for private feedback. So you do have to message them separately to do that.
Okay.
It does for the, once they left the review, then it allows you to
Yeah.
use AI, right? To reply back if you'd like. Although even then, I don't necessarily love some of the canned AI on that, because it's like, it just says, thanks, we're glad you enjoyed X, Y, and Z, which is what they probably wrote within the review. So every now and then I just like to switch it up, right? A lot of times,
Yeah,
I'll
I find a
still
lot of
use it.
times I change that.
Yeah. And see,
response.
I use it a lot of times, but then there's times where like, I'm going to change it up a little bit. So
Yeah, and that brings me back to another point is, most hosts do not respond to every single review, good or bad. And I have about 400 5-star reviews, and I've responded to every single one of them.
Yeah.
And I think when the guest is looking to book in the first place, they notice that.
100%.
And they know that when they leave their review, they're going to get a response from you, and that you acknowledged it. And I think that loop starting early is very valuable.
Again, I think it's also setting the tone, right? It's already showing that you are a proactive and intentional host, right? That you care about your business to take the time to respond to each and every one of your reviews.
Absolutely. So do you have another review reminder that goes out after that checkout day?
I didn't, because I'd say about 90%, probably 95% of my guests leave a review the day of checkout. But I actually just inserted a canned one because I was using one I just copy and paste that I had. So I actually just inserted a one in Hospitable over the weekend. That's a canned one. And again, it kind of says, thank you again for staying with us. I've left you a 5-star review. If you could spare a few minutes, we'd greatly appreciate, you taking a few minutes to write a positive 5-star review for us, so on and so forth. And when I've done that, again, I'd say 95% of the time they do reply, right? And they do leave that review. So I would say I can confidently say I capture about 98% of my guests that have stayed at, our newest property, White Birch Cabin, have left a review. There is that 2% that maybe hasn't. But even my direct booking guests have left reviews, because I have separate canned messages asking them to leave a review on our Facebook page, right? So it's been pretty successful.
And one of the features I do like about Hospitable is that they have there's a box you can check to where that message will only go out if they have not left a review.
Yes.
Which is really nice. So not every PMS has that option. So that's a very cool thing, to not have like this. I've used other PMSs where I had that awkward review reminder going out, and then the guest messages me and says, I left you a review. Why'd you ask me for that? Like, sorry. Yeah,
I'm already pulled
So,
over. I can't pull over
yeah.
any further.
exactly. So thank you, Hospitable.
Yes, thank you, Hospitable. Well, let's talk about just kind of some of the wrap up, right? So,
Yep.
when we talk about this 5-star reviews, again, they come from intentionality, and we're prepping the guests before arrival, we're surprising and delighting them, we're educating them about reviews, and then we're kind of following up with that gratitude, right? And so, if you take one thing away today, it's that 5-star hosting is about being perfect. It's about being proactive. And, I think that's the key here. Be proactive, be engaged, and be a great host.
I couldn't finish it up any better than that, Tyler. So if anybody wants to learn more about us, our website is upstreamvacations.com. You can check us out. And if you've got any value at all from this, we would really appreciate a 5-star review from you. And we will catch you in the peak season.
Have a good one, everybody.
Take care.